Hello my friends, welcome back to my channel. It's been a little bit, had a pretty hectic weekend rolling into the beginning of this week, but hopefully things are calming down a little bit now and I'll be able to get a little bit more out there. Until today, it's been terrible. Several days of reading, unable to get much progress at all. I think over the course of the weekend I read exactly one book out of the Iliad and a couple of poems. So that was not the reading weekend I was hoping to have, but I'll be able to hopefully get back on track here going forward. Today I wanted to talk about some of the things coming up in 2022 that I'm hoping to read. A lot of people are setting goals, picking 22 to read in 22, which I may do a separate video for that. I'm undecided. I mean, I've got plenty on my shelf that I'll be reading for this 100 book challenge by Criminali, so I'm leaving myself open to grab whatever I want. But let's just talk quickly about what I'm going to be doing. So a lot of people know I'm doing a big Lord of the Rings read along over the course of January through June, where we'll be doing one section a month because it's nicely divided into 6 parts. So we'll be doing a part a month to make it hopefully inviting for more people to jump in to be able to fit it into their schedules. Don't feel like you have to commit to sticking at that pace throughout the entire 6 months. If you join in January and decide you just can't put it down, more power to you, great. If you just read it in 2021, like I know some people have, and you just want to jump in on the chat to be a part of that, you're certainly welcome to do so. Hit me up on Boxer, and I'll gladly add you to the group that is currently for The Hobbit, and will be turning into Lord of the Rings on the 1st. I've got the Alexander Dumas project, the D'Artagnan romances, with Tony from An Erudite Adventure. We're going to be reading the 5 volumes of the D'Artagnan romances from January through October of 2022. A book every 2 months, starting with the Three Musketeers in January and February. I'm looking forward to revisiting that book, and as well as The Man in the Iron Mask, which will end it, and visiting for the first time the other 3 in between. So I'm very, very excited about that. I've got a buddy read in March coming up with Book Zealots. We'll be reading David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. It's one of the Dickens novels that I have not read. I've read a few Dickens, haven't read close to everything of his. And this is one that I've always had on my radar as one that I'd like to read. And so I'm looking forward to doing that with Arion. I'm not sure if Prometheus will be joining in as well on that, but I do know I'll be reading it with Arion, and I'm really excited about that. I think it'll be good to get through that mammoth. I would hold it up and show you, but I don't have a copy of it. And since I can't buy a copy of it right now, I doubt that I will have any issue in finding it at a local library to be able to check it out. Nor do I suspect that I'll have any issues being able to renew that if I don't finish in the 2 or 3 week time frame. Another mammoth that I'm hoping to hit that I also can't hold up, but don't expect to have any issues in finding, is War and Peace. I think Sandy from Miss Reads a Lot has helped show everybody that 90% of us on BookTube have not read War and Peace and would like to eventually, someday, maybe. And I think a good chunk of people are planning on reading it for 2022, or at least attempting to. And I would hate to not at least make the attempt on my end as well. Whether it's joining along with some other people reading it or just doing it independently on my own, it's one that it's been on my bucket list for a long, long time. I'd like to get it off. And so why not this year? The other mammoth, before we get into the three other big read-alongs that I've got going on, that people, if they want to join me, can join, is this massive tome, just under 1,100 pages. This is The Tale of the Genji by Murasaki Shikibu, translated by Edward G. Seidensticker. So this was written back in the 11th century Japan. And I mean, it's massive, and it's one I've wanted to read for a long time, ever since I first encountered this book. I think this is at least my second time, if not my third time, owning a copy of this and never reading it. And I need to change that. It's an undertaking. I'm sure that's why I've always danced around it, because it's long. But I'm excited to get to this. I think it'll be good. I have high hopes for this one. And should this turn out to be good, then that'll get me even more optimistic to eventually do Romances of the Three Kingdoms, which is a book that I've wanted to read for a while. And I know Sandy from Miss Reads a Lot is going to be reading it soon, if she hasn't already started in on it. And she's not the only one. I know there's, I think Prometheus is reading it. I think they're both planning on reading the abridged. I would love to read the unabridged. I'm crazy like that. I don't like reading something that's abridged, especially not for my first experience with it. So beyond those, I've got a Neuromancer that I'll be reading at some point in time with Sandy in 2022, which I'm super excited for. But the three big ones that I want to talk about, these are the big three. If you are looking at the history of literature, these are three fantastic writers that are hard to avoid, at least two of them. One of them, for sure, will be taught, at least still marginally, in almost any kind of literature curriculum. So we'll start with the less known of them, Edmund Spencer. So I picked up a copy of the Complete Poetical Works, which apparently, even though it's only 700 and some pages, I mean, this is very, very small print on there. Thank goodness I've got glasses now. Very, very small print. But apparently it has all of his Faerie Queene books in here, in addition to his other poetry. So I'll probably still use these volumes for the Faerie Queene, unless I get a single volume that is dedicated to the Faerie Queene. I've got books 1 through 4. I won't be needing books 5 through 7 until October at the earliest, so that'll be good. So I took this, I went through the table of contents, being the Complete Poetical Works. I know I'm not going to miss anything, whereas if I had gone by this, I probably would have missed some stuff. So my plan on this, and I'll have all this down below. I'm going to start January by reading Shepheardes Calender, which that is, give an idea of page ranges here. Shepheardes Calender is about 55 pages in here, so not very long. February, Complaints, containing sundry small poems of the world's vanity. So that's another 50-ish pages. And I think that you'll find it holds true that most of these are divided like that until we get to Faerie Queene. March, I've got Daphnaida, Colin, Clovts, Come Home Again, and Astrophell, a pastoral elegy upon the death of the most noble and valorous knight, Sir Philip Sidney. So 3 different works, all of them kind of shorter in length. For March, April, Amoretti and Epithalamion. Epithalamion. There we go. That's how I. Epithalamion. So that's the book that I'm going to do there. May, doing 4 hymns in there we go, 4 hymns, and then Prothalamion, which is a verse made in honor of the double marriage of the Lady Elizabeth and the Lady Catherine Somerset. So those are all his poetic works, so through May. And then in June, Departing Upon Faerie Queene, with Book 1 in June, Book 2 in July, Book 3 in August, 4 in September, 5 in October, 6 in November, and then 7, as well as verses, sonnets, and letters in December. So the 7 is by far the shortest. And then it's just kind of cleaning up anything else that happens to be lingering. I might hit some of the verses, sonnets, and letters sooner. We'll see. That'll include the mutability cantos, which I think is how they number 7, is what that's considered. I'm excited to get to Spenser. I mean, it's a single book, but I'll be reading across multiple books, and I'll be turning to some of the stuff out of the Norton Critical that gets added in here for extras in here, which I'm excited about. I hear that C.S. Lewis has a lot that he wrote on Spenser, so I might, when I can buy books, try to pick that up to get his literary criticism on Edmund Spencer, something to read. And I'd like to find a biography of Edmund Spencer to read. I imagine there's at least a couple out there. Probably not a wealth of them to choose from, because he's not very well known anymore, and that's a shame. So the second big undertaking is going to be Chaucer, to the surprise of nobody that's been following along. So I've got my Riverside Chaucer. And again, I broke it into 12 months. So I am literally spreading both of these out across the entire year to get through their works. And again, this is the one volume will get me through everything of his. This one is significantly more pages, but also, well, I mean, it is bigger font, but it's still pretty small font, but it'll be okay. I'm excited to get through all of Chaucer. So January, I've got the short poems and a treatise on the Astrolabe. February, the Legend of Good Women. March, Boece. April, the Romaunt of the Rose. May, the Book of the Duchess and House of Fame. June, Anelida and Arcite, and then the Parliament of Fowls. July, Troilus and Criseyde, which I'm so excited to revisit that one. And then August, we will depart into Canterbury's tales for the rest of the year. And they've got these in groupings. So Group A, Group for August, Group B1 and D for September, Group E and F for October, Group C, B2 and G for November, and then Group H and I for December. And I'll have all of those broken down again down below. And then last but not least, we have, well, before I get to that, I do have, it's not a biography, but it is a book about a year in Chaucer's life. This is Chaucer's Tale, 1386 and the Road to Canterbury by Paul Strome, which I plan to read. This one's nice and short, 250 pages, which would be a nice one to add in there and read alongside. And then again with Norton Critical, getting the textual notes that come along with that as something to read. And then the other big one that I'm not going to try to read everything by, but I am going to try to read something by each and every month. And that is the Bard himself, William Shakespeare. Before I get to the plays I'm going to be reading, I'm going to be trying to hit mostly ones that I'm pretty confident I haven't read before, with one for sure exception. coming in September for Shaptember. And I might read multiple in September. We'll see how everything else is going. But two side reads: A Year in the Life of William Shakespeare, 1599. And then Shakespeare's Kings, so the plays in the history of England in the Middle Ages, which I wanted to read in 2021 but didn't get a chance to get to. I'd like to get both of those read. And since I have to read 100 books off my shelf, I might as well read those that I have. But like the other three, I mean, if I could get a good biography of Spenser, Chaucer, and Shakespeare, I'd love to read a good, not overly long, but good detailed biography to get a good kind of overview of the life that as we understand it for all three of these. So for Shakespeare, in January, reading the play Measure for Measure. I think this is the only comedy that I have on there because I've read most of the comedies in the past. I didn't feel like revisiting any of them, and I don't believe I've read Measure for Measure. I'm hazy on the rest of them. Some I know for sure I've read. Most of them I think that I have read. But this one, I'm pretty confident it will be a new one for me to read. February, my plan is to read some of his poetry. So all of Shakespeare's sonnets, and then Lover's Complaint and Passionate Pilgrim. March, go with the Tragedy of Julius Caesar, which I have not read, and I'm excited to finally read. Follow that up with Pericles, Prince of Tyre in April. May, shift gears and jump into the future to the famous history of King Henry VIII, which is, I think, the one Henry play that I have not read. I think I've read all three of the Henry VI, but I'm not 100% confident on that. June, Tragedy of Antony and Cleopatra, continuing hitting the ancient realm plays. July, to pair with the Chaucer Troilus and Cressida, read the History of Troilus and Cressida by Shakespeare. So get a double whammy of immersion there, which I think will be fun. August, Cymbeline. September, going to reread Macbeth, the tragedy of Macbeth. I haven't read this one since I think high school. I might have reread it once since then, but by and large, I don't think I've revisited this. Whereas Hamlet, I know I've read that one probably a dozen times now. So it's about time that I go back to Macbeth and revisit that one and see if I can get even more of an appreciation for a play that I already do enjoy, and be able to get a better gauge of where it falls in the ranking of Shakespearean plays. October, returning back to poetry, Venus and Adonis, Rape of Lucrece, Phoenix and the Turtle, and then a funeral elegy that are all included in this Riverside Shakespeare. November, the tragedy of Titus Andronicus, to bring to an end the visiting ancient Rome on a lot of them. That's not getting through all of the ones from ancient Rome, but there's a lot of them in there, and they're the ones that I know I've never read any of them, and that I'm glad it's going to change. And then ending the year in December with The Life and Death of King John, which is the other history play that I know for sure I have not read. And then my plan would be, hopefully in 2023, to being done with Spenser and Chaucer, to dedicate a good chunk of that to getting through everything else that was not on this list, whether it's a read for the first time or a reread, to complete all of Shakespeare's works within that 2-year span of time, which I think is going to be really, really fun. I'm going to be looking to see if there's any kind of a local production of Shakespeare in person in Iowa anytime in 2022, and force my wife to come along with me to go and watch that. She probably will not enjoy it, but I will thoroughly enjoy it. And yeah, I'm excited to dive into those three pillars of English literature, uh, who just influenced so much. Even Spencer, who was not really taught today, had immense uh, impact on a lot of writers and poets that came after him. And so it'll be really, really fun and interesting to immerse myself in the three of those. And by breaking each of them into small chunks over the course of 2022, I hope that I'll be able to chip away at each of those without feeling overwhelmed and without making it so I am unable to read anything else but them. Because that would be my fear, is that I would bite off too much too fast and get sucked into all of those. And that's why the all of my read-alongs really for 2022 are stretched out, because then it makes it easier to juggle more in there when you're not trying to cram it all into a short time frame. I mean, I could probably take a month and just sit down and read all of the Spencer, but then I'm not able to really digest the information. So this has gone on longer than I had planned. So I'll go ahead and end the video here. Thank you for watching. I'm excited for what's coming up in 2022. Let me know what you are planning to read in 2022. And yeah, I look forward to kicking off that new year with some hopefully really good reading in there.